You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I think the strongest play is the functional non-alc space because you want to have a value proposition that beats out alcohol in some ways, right? Where it's like, I want you to have a great tasting experience. I want you to have some level of feeling and sensory because people are expecting that, at least historically, in those post 5 p.m. occasions. And then where we really win is knowing that there's no downside, there's no hangover.
Welcome back to Business of Drinks, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are rewriting the rules of what and how the world drinks. I'm Erica Ducey.
And I'm Scott Rosenbaum. Today's guest is shaking things up in the beverage world with a category-defining product that's growing faster than just about anything in drinks right now. We are talking to George Youmans, co-founder and chief revenue officer of Hiyo, an organic, non-alcoholic canned social tonic that's now selling over 500,000 cases a year.
Hiyo's growth has been staggering. According to Spin's data, it was the number one contributor to growth in the functional other beverage category last year, posting a year-over-year retail sales increase of more than 200%. Now, that kind of performance is truly exceptional in a market where many beverage segments are softening.
So, how does Hiyo differentiate itself? Not by overwhelming consumers with jargon, but really by focusing on describing the effect of the product, which George and his co-founders call the float. This is self-described as mood-boosting, stress-relieving sensations. Consumers understand the clarity of this proposition, right? The effect of this non-alcoholic beverage. This comes from functional ingredients like ashwagandha, L-theanine, lion's mane, and passion flower, but Hiyo really focuses on the function and purpose rather than the ingredients.
Exactly. They've created FOMO around that effect, the float, and also FOMO around the branding. You see this product and you want to pick it up. The design is really unique. It's evocative of sunsets with rich, beautiful colors. And George describes the can as an accessory that you just want to hold as much as you want to taste what's inside. And I have to say, that's totally true. I remember the first time I saw Hiyo on a store shelf, and I was like, I have to have that. And it does help that the liquid inside is delicious. You know, all these things are working in tandem to resonate with audiences. Hiyo quickly developed an audience of super fans online, 10xing their sales in its second year and 3xing the next. And now it's making massive inroads at retail. The brand tripled its revenue last year and just rolled out to more than 900 Target stores nationwide. And that's alongside placements in Whole Foods, Bevmo, H-E-B, Amazon, and Total Wine.
And earlier this year, people noticed Constellation Brands came in as a minority investor. This is a validation that some of the biggest players in the beverage world see a real future in the functional non-alc category. And Hiyo is also showing up in other ways, right? Literally meeting, again, consumers where they're at music festivals like EDC, Hard Summer, and Breakaway through a partnership with Insomniac. And this will bring the brand to over 300,000 festival goers, which will no doubt supercharge awareness of Hiyo.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation with George. It's full of takeaways for drinks entrepreneurs, from how to build brand equity online to what works to drive retail velocity, why price matters in a premium non-alc space, and also how to build a category from scratch.
Here's our conversation with George Youmans on how Hiyo is helping people drink less alcohol without feeling like they're missing out.
Exciting news! Are you headed to Bar Convent Brooklyn on June 10th? If so, come join me and Scott for coffee before the show.
That's right. We'll be hosting the first ever Business of Drinks coffee meetup on Tuesday, June 10th at Gumption Coffee on 39th Street, right next to Industry City.
So swing by between 9 and 10:30 a.m. to say hello, ask questions, and get fueled up before the doors open at BCB. Check out our posts on Instagram and LinkedIn for details, and comment to let us know if you can make it.
We can't wait to see you there.
George, thanks so much for coming on the Business of Drinks.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. Can't wait to chat, and excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell me about your background and how you ended up running a functional drinks company.
Yeah, so out of college, I cut my teeth at Red Bull, working in their entertainment and music marketing department. Was a really fun job right out of college because it was a lot of, frankly, partying and just getting the brand into some of the coolest rooms, Oscars, after parties, and things like that. But ultimately had a bit of cognitive dissonance around the product. I think Red Bull undeniably is one of the coolest brands in the world, but for me, wasn't in love with the product itself. A lot of junk in there, I think. Then moved over to Healthy CPG and worked at a startup called Snack Nation, now rebranded to Karoo, which was helping brands get primarily snacks into offices around the country. And there I was working with a lot of founders on like go-to-market strategy, and just was chatting with them so often and got really inspired, both by like, wow, this mission is so cool, I love this. And also a little bit of like, hey, if you can do it, I can do it kind of thing. And yeah, at that point, Evan and I started kicking around a couple different ideas around some CPG products that we were thinking about launching. We knew that we wanted to do beverage. COVID happened and gave me a little bit more space to think about stuff. Ev's my best friend, roommate in college, best man in my wedding. Kind of can't get rid of the guy, so figured I'd start a company together with him. We were kicking around a couple different ideas and for a beverage concept, and then this coincidental and frankly kind of traumatic experience happened in both of our lives, where we had family members hospitalized with alcohol related issues back in April 2019. So it was this weird moment that caused us both to cut back our drinking out of solidarity with those family members. And as we did, we saw the pretty profound need for a product like Hiyo in the lives of those we loved and in our own lives. And, we were still trying to go out and be the social butterflies that we are on the west side of LA, and just realized it was really difficult. The non-alc options all felt like sacrifices. It was like lesser than versions of their alcoholic counterparts. And we thought that was kind of backwards, where if you're trying to make a healthier decision, or, for all the myriad reasons why someone would not drink, usually there's a pretty altruistic or like aspirational nature to that. And to be met with options that don't reward that sucks. And so that was really the whole catalyst and idea behind the concept, was like, I think a lot of people want to drink less. Let's make it easier for people to do so. And how to do that was with a brand that felt like it was an accessory in your hand. And I should say, like, that's also when we hit up our good friend, Signe Cooper, also one of our best friends from college, to come over for the brand side of things, because Evan and I are not talented at all when it comes to design. So she was responsible for making the beautiful brand that we had. But we wanted to make a brand that felt like an accessory, a flavor profile that felt like elevated but accessible enough to kind of live in that similar post 5 p.m. occasion when people are having like complex cocktails or full bodied wine and stuff like that. But then we also wanted the feeling, right? Like, a lot of people, when you're going into that moment, you want to feel like stress free, you want to feel relaxed. And we wanted to try to create that similar experience that people are usually looking for from alcohol, but have that come from like healthy, functional ingredients that, due to our backgrounds, like didn't lead to abuse, right? Like we really wanted it to be something like sneaking wellness into the social occasion kind of. So that's how we started working on Hiyo and thought about, putting a bunch of adaptogens and nootropics in a delicious beverage that you could enjoy in that occasion. And thankfully, I think we did a pretty good job of loading it up with lots of functional ingredients that give you that stress relieving feeling, while still tasting pretty damn good and only having 30 calories. So.
Yeah. Well, and what would you say are the key differentiators from the other functional beverages that you might find on the store shelf? And also tell me about the nootropics and adaptogens you've decided to use.
Yeah. So key differentiators. Look, I think that there can be like this hyperfixation around a differentiation in CPG in general. And oftentimes, like, it does come down to a degree of like, what's your brand and like, how does your brand make people feel? What are your flavors and does it taste better? And obviously taste is subjective, but like, that's a really big driving factor of any brand. So like to not say those two things wouldn't really be accurate. So I think, like, again, I'm biased. I love my brand, but like, I think we have an awesome brand. I think we have great taste. Our functionality, we didn't skimp on the adaptogens and nootropics. So we really do create the most efficacious product that we can. And we load it up with, 1.7 grams of functional ingredients of those adaptogens and nootropics that I'll get into in a sec. And then we're also the only USDA Organic product in our category, which honestly, we kind of still think is pretty surprising. But yeah, we're proud of that. And it's certainly more difficult to source those ingredients. And we wanted to make sure that people, when they try Hiyo, they know that we're trying to give them the most premium experience possible while still having like an accessible price point that doesn't, fully break the bank. So yeah. And then your second question on the adaptogens and nootropics that we use. So in each can, every Hiyo has the same functionality too. So it's not like you have blackberry lemon for stress relief and then peach mango for energy. All of them have the same stress relieving, mood boosting kind of feeling. And that comes from the ashwagandha, L-theanine, lion's mane, lemon balm, passion flower, and ginger that we put in each can. So each of those has its own kind of reason or specific benefit. But when they work together, it creates this, I don't know, just delightful, chilled out sensation that we like to call the float.
I love that because it is really true that the brand is associated with this floaty feeling, right? Like I think that I think you guys have really successfully messaged that across all of the assets and everywhere, where it's like you immediately associate like floaty with the brand. So I think that's super interesting. And I was curious to know how you landed on like the float as like one of those sort of key attributes.
Yeah. So we were creating a new category, right? And we're like thinking, all right, we know that we're creating this new feeling for people too. And it was difficult for us to describe what is that feeling. Like, it's not a high, it's not a drunk. You're not getting buzzed on Hiyo. Like, we don't want to give that connotation and then set people's expectations to be different than what they're expecting, right? So we were trying to think about this for a really long time. And then actually one of our earliest investors and our most consistent investor, biggest supporter, his wife was trying the product and was like, I don't know, I kind of get this floaty feeling. And we were like, oh, that's it. And it just was this aha moment that I put a lot of stock in that I think what was beautiful about that was it gave you enough of an idea that like, oh, that's interesting, but it also was really curiosity inducing, which caused a lot of conversation on when we were launching, especially direct to consumer. We had so much of the float feeling in our messaging, and people were really curious, like, what is that? What does that mean? What does that feel like? Okay, this is a non-alcoholic drink. I do want to drink less, and they're promising this floaty feeling. I want to know what that is. Or people would sound off in the comments, and then it almost turned into like this Reddit forum on our ads that signal to the algorithms like, hey, this is a really good performing ad. So it just kind of snowballed, and I think a lot of that is around the flag that we planted around the feeling. And again, like, I'm really proud that we didn't try to brand ourselves as like yeah, we're a non-alcoholic drink, or like we're a mocktail or things like that. It was like, no, this is what we are. We provide a floaty feeling, not talking about what we aren't, describing ourselves as what we aren't, of like, we're not alcoholic. We wanted to be a little bit more us forward, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the appropriate way to describe that is, but yeah.
But it seems to have resonated. So, take me back to the early days. You launched Hiyo in 2021. Describe the first year.
The first year was working out of Evan's apartment. Again, this was like still in the middle of the pandemic. We were, it was just me and Evan full time. Signe was working like from like 5 p.m. into the deep late hours. So it was just the three of us. And it was very fun. It was very chaotic and not a lot of structure, I would say. It was just, okay, we're going to put out whatever fire arises today, whatever one is most pressing. But thankfully, what we had was like sales did just continue to grow. Like there was a lot of excitement and demand for the product. And frankly, like the biggest challenges that we kept dealing with were scaling too quickly and not having enough product. Like we stocked out a bunch, but thankfully, because we were very, I don't know, like founder forward brand and very authentic, I'd say, and we only launched on direct to consumer, we'd get to talk to our customers and say, hey, we're sorry. And we're humans behind this brand. And honestly, I think it almost ingratiated us more with a lot of people, where they felt a little bit more included on the mission, included in the, like on the team, you know?
Yeah.
But if I were to describe the first year, it was a lot of strong growth on direct to consumer and pretty horrific operational mistakes. Like our first co-packer, the first run we ever did, all of our watermelon lime we had to throw away because our co-packer messed it up, and then they weren't going to pay for it, and we didn't really have money, and it was just like this locking of horns. So that was really difficult. Then we had to find a new co-packer. Then when we did that, we had shrink sleeves on our cans, which is a great way to have your product look really pretty if you want to have like very intricate designs on cans. But we were learning that oftentimes it's really difficult to actually get them on and not warp at all. And ours were so warped. They looked like they were in the middle of like a Salvador Dali painting of just like melting all over the place. So that was like really stressful. We hated putting those out into the market, but we didn't have that much money. So we kind of needed them to go out into the market because we spent all the money to produce it. And most of the time we just said sorry to our customers, and they usually were pretty understanding about it. I don't know. And then it was just like a lot of stockouts and us thinking that we were forecasting appropriately and realizing we were terrible at it. And I mean, honestly, forecasting is still really tough.
No, I mean, I think like, you all have really experienced exponential growth since the founding. So tell me what that looks like. Can you characterize the growth trajectory for me?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, originally the majority of our growth, like I said, we built our brand online. We were coming out of COVID, creating a new brand, creating a new category, right? So it was a big thing for us to like learn why people liked us, why people didn't like us, figure out our positioning, our messaging, what was resonating with people. Also to have those operational hiccups, like online was such a good idea because online customers are really understanding. You go and have like a big mess up at Whole Foods, they're gonna be like, all right, thanks for coming, you're out and we'll never see you again. No shade to Whole Foods. Like I get it. They would need to do that. And they didn't do that to us. So like, I don't know why I said them specifically, but like you do that to any retailer, right? So it was really important for us to grow online. And thankfully for us, our paid acquisition channel was just incredibly efficient. Like we were able to just plug every dollar in and we were getting $5 back. You know, it was just like a very simple, let's continue to refine our messaging. Let's refine who we're targeting and just grow there and allow people to organically like spread the word on top of like our paid ads. So, you know, that was in e-commerce. Like the first year we 10x'd, like the first year was a half year. And then in 2022, we 10x'd. The following year, we 3x'd in our third. And then now as the business has kind of matured, we're seeing that the retail side of the business is really where the majority of the expansion is going to continue to happen, where we tripled our revenue last year. We're planning to, we're on pace to about 4x in retail this year. And we're looking to continue to keep that trend going. And that's primarily through growing our distribution, right? Like you can go deeper into the accounts that we're in, but because we're such an early stage brand, there's so much room to run in terms of new points of distribution, new accounts to open and unlock. So a lot of that growth is going to end up happening by launching in new retailers.
Yeah. And what does the full product line look like at this point, and how is it evolving?
So our product line, we really wanted to try to keep it simple with exclusively like Hiyo is a 30 calorie organic beverage that has the same functionality that comes in a 12-ounce can. Like that is what we are. That's what we're going to be for a long time. We're not really innovating or iterating outside of that because we think that one, what we're doing is working, and two, we don't want to introduce too much operational complexity when you don't need to. The way that we're continuing to expand is just different flavor profiles. That a lot of that is coming from our customers. Like because we built such a large following online, we can just ask them and almost let them be our R&D team of what sounds the best to you. And then work with our beverage development house that helps us on all of the flavors. And right now we just launched our fifth SKU, Passion Fruit Tangerine, at Expo West. It's going great. Honestly, it's my favorite. I don't want to, maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but I'm really proud of that one. And we got some more very soon in the hopper with a national rollout that I'm not at liberty to say right now, but there's an exclusive launch happening in the summer timeframe. I'll say that.
Awesome. And how do you think about pricing?
Yeah. So what we always thought was we're kind of the premium, like organic option in our category, but we always wanted to make it accessible. So right now that price is anywhere from like $349 to $399. We think that that's on the higher side of where we want to be, frankly, but just given the size and scale of the brand that we are, we're not experiencing such great economies of scale that we can really reduce that too meaningfully at this point. But I think that it's something that we're looking at very closely because I really don't want to be tone deaf. And I know that a lot of people are struggling right now. And this is a elective choice of a beverage to have. And, I want to make it as easy as possible for people to drink less. And if Hiyo is more expensive than its alcoholic counterpart, it makes it more difficult. So like that's something that is very much on our mind, and we're trying to find ways that we can make the price more accessible without cutting corners on the quality. And some of those things just happen when you scale. Thankfully, we've been able to grow a lot, so that is helping. So maybe somewhere down the line, we'll try to cut costs there, or cut the price down. I mean, to help lower it. But so far, so good in terms of who's buying it. But I think that if we were able to bring the price down, we would open the aperture of how many people could enjoy Hiyo guiltlessly more frequently.
Yeah, totally. Well, talking about like the current size. So now you guys have surpassed 500,000 cases a year. What were the biggest operational challenges in getting to that size?
So we had multiple stockouts. That stockouts when online, if you just don't forecast appropriately and like you go viral or something like that, sometimes those stockouts can really be a headache. The biggest one that we had was last year, where we had a stockout happen while we were also shifting to a new secondary packaging. So like when you get Hiyo, it's not just in cans, it's either in a 4-pack or a 12-pack. And we were changing the manufacturer who produce those for us. And then as that stockout happened, those 4-packs, they weren't up to snuff. Like we got them and we're like, this isn't right. So it really hurt our momentum, I would say. It ultimately, like, not too many customers like had a negative experience. Like we were able to get around it, but we weren't just able to grow as exponentially as we wanted to. So I think those are some of the challenges. The other things that are just, you have to closely monitor for a super functional beverage are, and we also use organic juices. It's just making sure that there's no bacteria and like you're always in spec. And thankfully we've been able to do that. And when there's been any issues, we've caught that really quickly. So that's always something to look out for, I guess. And then now, as the scale that we are at this moment, because of the SKU proliferation of, we don't just sell a 12-pack. There's like singles, 4-packs, and 12-packs. And then there's now variety packs. And it's accurately forecasting what each SKU is going to do. And we're trying to get better at that. But I think it doesn't matter how big of a company you are and how many people you have on the team. Like that's always something that's really challenging. And that's something that we deal with every day. Like we're dealing with it acutely, like right now.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, you can't predict virality or that something's going to take off in a certain retail account. Like, there's only so much you can predict. Yeah. I mean, and well, talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned like the packaging, and I think that's a very distinctive feature of Hiyo's products. So talk me through the branding and the visual identity of Hiyo.
Yeah. So this I got to give like all the love to my co-founder Signy. Like she's the beautiful brains behind that side of the business. But the branding, what we were thinking about when we were creating Hiyo's brand, we wanted something to call out our Californian roots, but like not the typical tropes of waves, surfboards, palm trees. Like that felt a little too on the nose. But we thought, okay, this is a mood boosting beverage. People like want to be in a good mood. Like when are we happiest? And then we kind of got around this idea of like, it's tough to be in a bad mood looking at a sunset. And so then we had those sunset inspired panels. And then what we liked calling that front panel is the window. So it's kind of like, if you look at the packaging of Hiyo, the H of the Hiyo is just outside of it. And it's kind of like it symbolizes Hiyo bringing you from outside into that state of mind. So it's kind of like a look into the package, into the can of what's inside there, and hopefully also like a different state of mind. So that's the intention. And ultimately it just was like really beautiful. It's very striking and it could feel like an accessory in your hand.
I like that idea of like the accessory in the hand, because it really does feel that way. And the colors are just beautiful. Like it's definitely something that you want to pick up and hold. So I think that comes through.
Yeah.
Reflecting on the brand's journey since launch, if you had to choose 3 specific moments or partnerships or campaigns that were the most impactful in developing the company and helping to drive growth, what would those 3 moments be?
Okay. I'll go. The first one would be Evan was getting his MBA at UCLA when we were coming up with this idea, and we used his master's thesis. His master's thesis was Hiyo. Like it was to create this company. And then we got entered into this competition there that was called the NAP competition, and we won it. And that gave us $40,000, which at that time allowed me to quit my job and go full time in this. So that will always be this like wildly strong catalyst for us. I think the next big moment would probably be launching Sprouts nationwide. Like they're our largest account right now. We do incredible volume through them. They've been an awesome partner to work with. And that just felt so special to me of being like seeing our product on those shelves across the country. And that really was where a lot of people started seeing the type of volume that Hiyo could really do. And then the third, I am probably this is something that I'm extremely proud of in my professional career, of closing the Series A that we did last year with Constellation Ventures. It was really challenging. Like, I think anyone listening to this podcast who is raising knows it's a difficult environment to raise. And we were able to raise at a pretty solid valuation with a great partner, and set our company up for the long run. That, all right, we've got some financial firepower now. So I'm really proud of that because it was really difficult. And I think now it's allowing us to grow from this, like, as I like to call it, like this gangly teenager of a brand to a more, a young adult. Why don't we say? And that's like, we get to hire awesome people. We get to scale up our marketing ideas. We get to work with some partners that we had been wanting to launch with for a long time. It's just, it's a great engine, right? It's the gasoline in the engine, I guess. I don't know. That I'm really proud of, so.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like different growth and channels, how did you secure your first major retail or distribution deal? You start out DTC, and like, what was the next step from there?
Yeah. So thankfully, the direct to consumer business was starting to gain some notoriety. Like, people were starting to recognize us, and we weren't really in any retailers. Central Market, one of the buyers over there, hit us up and was like, "Hey, I'm seeing you guys constantly on my feed. Would you guys want to potentially work with us?" And at that time we were like, yeah. How? So we needed to figure out like how we were going to actually distribute. And then quickly thereafter, Erewhon came on as well, which is like our backyard. And then Wegmans was soon thereafter. And we closed them at our first UNFI show. So it's kind of like, our first was an inbound. Our second, we reached out to Erewhon, and thankfully they accepted us pretty quickly. And then there was one at a UNFI show, because we were like, apparently UNFI and KE is the way to do this. Like, we're going to go through the broadliners and we're going to go to the shows and try to start getting into brick and mortar, because frankly, that was also something that our direct to consumer business, or our customers there, were constantly asking, like, "Hey, I'll keep buying this product, but frankly, sometimes it gets damaged because it's difficult to ship cans. I'd probably prefer to buy this just with my groceries." So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to drink less. So we want to be sold where people are typically buying drinks, and most of the time that's in wholesale. So we knew that we had to start shifting towards that.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for founders who are just starting to pitch like regional chains or some of those higher value retail partnerships?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the early days, it's probably more so the vision and the excitement and the brand and the mission and like those types of things. It's a little bit more hype, I guess. And that works for smaller regional accounts. As you get into the larger ones that are going to be more national, I mean, even like the super regional of like a Wegmans, for example, a Wegmans, an HEB, a Meijer, those types of larger ones that are in their specific regions, they're going to be a lot more data driven, and that needs to be a component of your pitch, because ultimately you put yourself in the shoes of whomever you're talking to whenever you're selling something, be it an investor or a buyer. And like, for a buyer, it's, how am I going to make you look good for your boss? It's probably giving you the strongest rate of sale, like being the most efficient with the space. If you give me this space in your store that's so coveted, I can prove to you, these are all the ways that I'm going to make sure that this little space that you give me, I'm going to make a bunch of money for you for that. And like, the people that I'm going to drive into your stores, the turns of my product itself, like, those are the things that make a compelling pitch. And if you have data that can back that up, I think it's going to be a lot stronger than you just saying, "Trust me."
Totally. Totally. Well, what's worked for you guys to drive velocity at retail accounts? Because I know you've had a lot of success there.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think that's just like a little bit of an ace in the hole is, we have 500,000 people online who are our customers, right? So it's like, when we launch, let's say a Meijer, for example, we can geofence around any Meijer location that we're in and say, like send out an email blast or an SMS blast, say, hey, we just launched in Meyer, like, maybe go get a free can on us and give them a coupon, or we'll just say, hey, we're just launching there. Go now, you can get it there. And I think that's probably a great place of how it starts. But then maybe it's because we just have a small team. Maybe it's my own lack of experience, but we really haven't had this super highbrow, complex, intricate philosophy around driving strong velocities. It's like, keep it simple. Let's try to do the necessary amount of TPRs that those retailers want. And let's try to like line those up with displays as much as possible. And if you have a strong repeat customer rate, that strategy will work for you. And that's what's working for us. I think also for us that is a benefit. Hiyo is a drink that people usually consume multiple in a sitting. So like the singles and multi-packs being merchandised together is a really strong idea for us, because singles drive trial and the multi-packs drive kind of that repeat customer. So it gives us a little bit more, it gives us a legitimate reason to ask for more shelf space.
Totally. And I'm curious to know, is the best selling SKU the variety pack? Because it feels to me like that would be the one to fly off the shelf.
Yeah. So online for sure. It's now just starting to get into retailers. But yeah, the variety pack, in the few retailers that it's in, it flies. And in one of them, it obviously it has 12 cans in it. It sells more units of the variety pack than some of our singles, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Considering like it's such a larger ring. But yeah, I think it just speaks to the multi, like you drink multiple in a sitting. You also, it's a good drink to share with people. You bring it to book club or a party or a barbecue or whatever,
Yeah, totally. And Hiyo recently launched an Amazon shop. So tell me about that experience. How's it going?
Yeah. Well, it's performing way better than we were expecting. Amazon, turns out a lot of people shop there. Pretty big retailer. Which, I've been trying to be transparent in this whole conversation. When you don't accurately forecast on Amazon, then you don't give them enough product so that they're fulfilling by Amazon. Then you get put onto FBM, which is fulfilled by merchant, which then means that you're not on Prime and you're not getting that like 2-day shipping. And that's what the experience is for people when they go onto Amazon. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about getting onto Amazon, for sure, my strongest recommendation would be do whatever is necessary to make sure that you are always FBA. Because honestly, our efficiency is like 50% better in general when we are on FBA compared to FBM. But thankfully, either way, it's been going really good. But when we're on FBA, it just soars.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing advice. Thank you for that. Let's talk about your customers. Which demographics are most represented among your customers?
We joke that we're like a cool mom brand, which I think we definitely are. Like online, I think that the way that we grew our brand was primarily through meta ads, so like Facebook and Instagram. And I think the person who shops on those most often is that like older millennial female, and our brand resonates well with that person who's a little bit more health conscious. So that, in terms of the data that we have, that's the consumer that we're reaching. But when you think about like the more macro lens of Hiyo and what we're trying to do, ultimately we are trying to make it easier for people to drink less and prioritize their health more. That is a desire and a phenomenon that's happening multi-generational, right? Like Gen Z is drinking significantly less than millennials. And my parents are drinking significantly less because they are thinking about longevity and wanting to live long and play with their grandkids. Like it's something that's all generational, and we are continuing to think about how can we position Hiyo and the messaging and the brand to resonate with all of those people and make it feel incredibly inclusive to all, to anyone who's looking to drink less. So that's something that we continue to work on. But I think the brand is one that, again, we tried to make it inviting. It's sunsets. It's pretty. Like that's something that anyone can kind of get behind.
Totally. Well, looking back, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned about scaling a business?
Okay. Um, I think the first one, and this has just been my experience, a lot of people tell you to not start a business with friends or family. I feel like I kind of got to do both almost with, I'm so damn close with Evan and Signe that they almost feel like family. We've known each other for so long. And I think that idea I think it's terrible. Like I think it's a dumb idea, at least in my experience, because starting a business is really hard. Like everyone knows that it's really challenging. And there's going to be a lot of moments where you are fully feeling like you are in the trenches. And there's going to be things that like you're going to have to find inspiration from somewhere. And, for me, the selfish idea of just doing it for me doesn't motivate me nearly as much as when, okay, if I'm working my ass off, Evan is benefiting and Signe is benefiting as well. And that has always been something that's really motivated me. And I think it motivates Evan and Signe a lot as well. So I like the idea of working with people that you love. So I think that's one strong piece of advice. The second is like make sure if you're thinking about starting something, make sure that you're climbing the right mountain. Like, does this thing actually have viability? And how have you pressure tested that before you put all this time, effort, energy, money into this? Like, make sure that there is a true need for your product. You're the right person to do it. And there's an ability to scale because ultimately, like CPG, for the most part, is such a like small margin business that like it's all going to be a business only becomes viable through scale for the most part. And I think making sure that you know your unique lane that you're playing in and your ability to actually resonate with a lot of people is really important. And I think a lot of people work really hard on once they have their idea, but they don't work long enough on exactly the positioning and the reason for why their brand is going to resonate. So spend more time there before you have to work twice as hard to fix it later, I guess.
Totally, totally. Yeah, great advice. And speaking of scaling, how many people are now working for the company, and sort of what are the different capacities?
This is crazy to say, but we got, as of last Friday, they haven't all started, but 16 people.
Wow,
We
congrats.
issued four job offers last Friday, all of whom we're really excited about. So, but yeah, we're really proud of the team that we built. It feels very familial. We haven't had to fire anybody and no one's left. So we're really proud of that. And I think that speaks to the culture. Um, right now, it's the three founders. We've got a VP of ops and then a ops manager. So two people on the ops team. Marketing, we have three people on the marketing team. Sales, it's just me and of our director of sales. And then we have a director of growth who's like all ecom based. So just one person doing all of our ecom business, which again is pretty damn impressive given how large we've scaled that. He's a beast. Um, and then a customer service person and a content creator.
Wow.
That's right now. Yeah, but
Yeah.
soon changing.
And you mentioned that, you launched ETC, you built up like 500,000 customers there. And at this point, what are the different marketing or social media activations or campaigns or strategies that are working to really continue to build the brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're trying to do a little bit more of is occasion-based marketing. So really thinking about when we can slot into people's lives, because we know that the main reason why people drink Hiyo is to like support a healthier lifestyle. So what are the different ways that Hiyo can come into people's life to effectively accomplish that? So we do a lot of that online. I mean, our biggest bets right now, from like at least a bandwidth and frankly budget perspective, we're doing a lot in the music space. So concerts and venues, like we think that liquid to lips is always going to be a really important thing in beverage, and you want people to be able to try your product. There's a lot of different times and moments and the way that you can do that. But we think if you're trying Hiyo for the first time, watching an artist that you spent, $50 to $100 to go see, and you're trying Hiyo and associating it with that great memory, that's going to be a really strong experience. And it also, to me, that moment, the first time that I went to a concert sober, was such a big unlock of like, oh, I thought I always like had to drink to go to these to enjoy it. And then it started this cascading effect for me of all of these different moments that like you don't need to drink to really enjoy it. And then there's no sacrifice on the back end of like a hangover the next day. This actually is a better experience. So we're really leaning heavily into the entertainment, the music space, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And what about paid advertising? Are there strategies or platforms that are working particularly well right now?
It's like all Meta and Google.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like we do primarily that. We're just starting to get a little bit more on TikTok. It's TikTok's fickle. It's like it's a weird thing to play in, but we're starting to crack that code a little bit. But the majority, the lion's share of our business is Meta and Google.
Mm-hmm. And from a business perspective, what keeps you up at night?
First, our employees or my colleagues overworked. I think that's been really tough as again, part of the reason why I was really excited about that fundraise that I mentioned earlier was that we were going to be able to build out the team because we've outgrown the current team that we have, right? Like from the size of the business, and that's just tapping everyone's bandwidth. So I'm really excited to be bringing more people on to lend some additional pairs of hands. So that's one. Two is just operational stuff. Like there's always, it's the forecasting thing of forecasting the wrong SKUs, and that's always challenging. And then, I mean, this is maybe a little bit too vulnerable or something, but I don't know. It's like a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Like, am I what got us to the size and scale of the business that we are currently? Like, what's worked? And myself and Evan and Signe, like we've clearly been able to do that. Are we going to be able to do that moving forward as well? Like, and there's doubts around that. I think that doesn't necessarily keep me up at night.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think about often. And I think there's probably a healthy level of that, right? Where having some self-doubt then encourages you to surround yourself with really smart people. And that's why we went out and got some awesome new leaders to come and support the business. That's why we had incredible advisors from the jump. And, that's where you kind of make a weakness a strength, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
You don't have a bunch of experience, great. Then you're not going to be like super bullheaded. You're going to be very malleable. And if you can do a good enough job of surrounding yourself with smart people who have been there, done that, then you'll be willing to take advice. And then that's maybe actually a strength. So
Totally. And I think I hear just about every founder say that. So that is a commonality, and one that I think keeps people like on their toes. So what are your predictions for this functional beverages space? What do you think is going to happen in your crystal ball for in the coming years?
Yeah. So I think right now the desire to drink less is far outpacing the supply of it. And retailers are slowly and now starting to get much more into it so that these types of options are going to be more readily available at your local supermarkets. At every restaurant, there's going to be a zero proof section of the menu. And I think ultimately, like, again, I'm biased here, but I think the strongest play is the functional non-alc space because you want to have a value proposition that beats out alcohol in some ways, right? Where it's like, I want you to have a great tasting experience. I want you to have some level of feeling and sensory because people are expecting that, at least historically, in those post 5 p.m. occasions. And then where we really win is knowing that there's no downside, there's no hangover, and it's not going to like derail your day or your momentum of living a healthier lifestyle. I'm really optimistic and excited about the fact that I think we did a good job of positioning ourselves as like almost if athletic brewing is to beer, we want to be that to like high noons. And ultimately, seltzers and fruity kind of options are the faster growing beverages. So I think once people understand what our category is, it will take off like a rocket ship.
And how do you plan to build on the brand's momentum in the coming year?
I mean, right now it's a lot of knocking down doors, right? So like growing our distribution, our points of distribution, that's a big component. And then some very exciting kind of one-of-one partnerships that we are going to be launching and announcing in relatively short order.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear. All right. So, last question. A drinks entrepreneur asks you for a book, a movie, online class, something to provide business value. Who or what would you recommend and send them to read or follow?
All right. Well, I'll give a quick shout out to Ian Knowles, who's been an advisor to us since before Hiyo was Hiyo. He's been like a therapist, an advisor. Like he's just invaluable. So like, but don't go reach out to him because he's mine and I don't want to share him. But I got to give him a shout out. Uh, the first place that my mind goes though with this is a book, and it's The Obstacle is the Way. It's not a book specific to business. It's not a book specific to beverage business at all. It's a book by Ryan Holiday on Stoic philosophy, and it's been the book that's changed my life in the most substantial possible way. And I think it really applies well to the expected challenges that you are going to face pretty much constantly if you are launching a beverage brand or launching any company. And this book helps you reframe the way that you look at those problems and kind of simplifies it in a way that's really simple, profound, effective. And honestly, I gift that book to anyone who will allow me to. So yeah,
I'm sold. I'm gonna add that to my reading list right now.
Absolutely.
Well, George, thank you so much for coming on the Business of Drinks. This has been such a fun and super insightful conversation.
I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Is your drinks brand looking to start or expand import and distribution?
Whether you're seeking to enter new markets or you're unhappy with a current distributor and desiring a better fit, you should know about Swig Partners.
Founded by industry experts Eric Siegelbaum and Amy Troutmiller, Swig takes the guesswork and the legwork out of distribution strategy. Swig helps brands and distributors find the right fit for long-term relationships and sales success.
US-based importers and distributors should reach out too. With Swig, they can explore new products for free. And brands, you can get $100 off by mentioning Business of Drinks. Find out more at swigpartners.com/business of drinks. That's swigpartners.com/business of drinks.
Welcome back to Last Call Again. This is Caroline, joined by Erica and Scott. And today we are looking at another interesting graphic. This one is coming from Visual Capitalist, and it is a map of the United States, and it's showing us America's wine consumption per capita. It's based on a report by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. So looking at the map, the lowest state per capita alcohol consumption is West Virginia, followed closely by Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma. This doesn't feel very surprising to me. The highest is Washington, D.C., where Scott is reporting from. So I'm curious to hear from him on that. And then the overall for the entire country average is about 0.42 gallons per person. So that comes out to about 16 and a half bottles of wine a year. So Scott, being in the highest per capita wine drinking zone in the country, what about this was surprising to you? Was that surprising?
It is not surprising that in Washington D.C., the nation's capital, there is a lot of drinking. Other non surprises is that the coastal areas, California, New Jersey, New York, even Virginia and North Carolina are pretty high when it comes to per capita consumption. Um, some surprises here, though, are that states like Vermont and New Hampshire are also quite high. It is interesting to me that if you were to overlay this map with another, and that is median income per state, right, it tracks that states that typically have higher incomes are drinking a little more wine. It's not one for one, and we will link to that, but California, Maryland, Virginia, and that does go some way in explaining why southern states, West Virginia, aren't drinking as much. It's understandable that Utah, despite its high median income, is not drinking as much due to the demographics there. One final point that I find pretty interesting is doesn't seem, at least based on this map, to be a correlation between whether a state is a control state or not and whether per capita consumption is high. So, for instance, New Hampshire is a control state, and per capita consumption is quite high there, whereas it is not as high in Pennsylvania, another control state.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did wonder if there would be a correlation between control states and consumption, but apparently not. And, I dug in a little bit deeper. I went into the NIAAA report and looked at some more of their stats and graphs. And I found it interesting to break out the map even further and look at it by region. So wine consumption is lowest in the Midwest and the South. And then, it shows that it has flattened out over a period of years after having grown for many years. So, I think we're seeing this flattening out. The most recent measure in 2022, which is tracked on this graph, is showing slight declines. So it definitely seems like we saw that COVID bump, but we are not at the lowest amount of overall ethanol consumption. There definitely were dips in the recession around 2008. There were dips in the 90s, and their tracking goes back all the way to the 70s. And in the late 70s, consumption across all categories was higher than it is now. So that's really interesting to me. And, I think for this particular chart, it's fascinating to see that some of the states that you would expect to be, higher consumption places. I'm thinking of Texas. I don't know. I guess I just associate Texas with being a party state, and Austin, and, or Colorado, or any of these sorts of places. It really was a bit surprising to me to see that it's the highest consumption states are clustered at the edges of the country. So, we have the entire West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, even Nevada. We got some Las Vegas shout out there. And then on the East Coast, including Florida, is also quite high. So it was interesting to me to see that it really is clustered in the coastal regions for the most part in terms of highest areas of consumption, even extending out to Alaska and Hawaii.
One note that I saw that struck me was that, and it's not a surprise, we've been hearing this for years now, but that wine sales and tasting room visitations dropped for a second straight year. And how the oversupply of planted vineyards is leading to discounting wine and all that. And this is anecdotal and based off of conversations that I've had with winemakers and winery owners in Michigan and Virginia, a lot of which are saying that traffic is extremely up in their tasting rooms year over year. So again, anecdotally, I think there is sort of a shift happening in just the American wine and where people are looking for wine from. There might be drops in, let's say, California tourism, wine tourism, as compared to 5 years ago. But I do think there are bright spots that hopefully I can explore more soon here for you all. So that's all we have time for. Thanks again for joining us on The Business of Drinks. Please follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to share us out on social, rate us in our star ratings. It really helps us to find some new listeners. And finally, if there is anything you'd like us to cover on the podcast, please reach out, send us an email at podcast@businessofdrinks, or reach out on Instagram or LinkedIn. We read all our messages and we will respond. So we'll talk to you next time.